Hey, everybody, thanks for joining me today. Happy Taco Tuesday. My name is Andrew Alvarez, and I'm the Latino conservative. We got a lot to talk about today. Specifically, the Democratic Party is going bonkers. They are just doing stuff that's out of control. It's weird, right? It's very weird. It's almost as if some people have called it and they're actually doing it. We've got that. We've got a few other topics that we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, a couple things. You know the drill. Go like, subscribe, sign up for alerts. Drop a comment on this video. Let me know that you like what I'm doing. Let me know that you don't like what I'm doing. Let me know that you agree with me. Let me know that you don't agree with me. Tell me what you think. But first, before we get into the meat and potatoes, a word from our sponsors. For those of you thinking of starting a podcast, I highly suggest it. It's a great way to get not only your voice out there, but the voice of potentially others as well. I use Anchor for my podcast, for my audio version of the podcast. So if you're watching this right now on YouTube, just also know that there's a way that you can listen to this only. I know YouTube kind of gets a little picky. Like if you want to have your phone in your pocket and your phone shuts off, then you don't get to listen to the audio anymore. You have to have YouTube playing. But if you want to listen to this on podcast, so you can download it and play it without all of those needing all of those ads on there, except for the ads that I put on there, then by all means, go listen to this on Anchor. Anchor also syndicates to Apple Podcasts, to Spotify, Google, and all of those links are in the description. One thing Anchor allows me to do as well. Y'all hear me asking for support every now and then, but Anchor makes it super easy for as little as 99 cents a month. And you can cancel anytime. You can be a sponsor of the show. That's right, because right now, as it is, I do this totally free. I get no monetary compensation for this. I'm not sponsored by any major news network, no Fox News, even though I've been on Fox News. But Anchor helps me recoup some of the costs of hosting this podcast. And it also syndicates it to Apple, Google, and to Spotify. Anchor, you can also start your own podcast. It's totally free, and you too can make money off of Anchor. Go download the Anchor app right now for more details. You like my mug? I like it. So let's talk gun control. And I'm going to tread lightly on this. I've talked about it in the last couple, or in at least a couple recently previous episodes. Was a couple of gun control bills. One that's proposed by Sheila Jackson Lee and Dianne Feinstein. Two women who have absolutely no idea what a firearm actually is. They have none. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sheila Jackson Lee is quoted as saying, "I have held an AR and it weighs as much as like 6 boxes, like for moving, fully loaded boxes." Something like that, but it's paraphrased, but the concept is the same. She is saying that an AR-15 is as heavy as 6 fully loaded boxes for moving. Dianne Feinstein's bill would basically make everyone register their firearms that they have already. It would prohibit front control mechanisms or add-ons like the pistol grip on the front. It would ban the pistol grips on the back as well. Stuff that would actually help someone who is using it responsibly control the firearm. It also prohibits grenade launchers and adjustable stocks. The fit of the gun, it prohibits you from having an actual gun that fits you. Those two women, one's in the House in Houston, which is very Democratic. One's in California, also very Democratic. But they're both just grabbing for straws. There is a spot in the Second Amendment that says shall not be infringed. Okay, so what they're doing then is infringing in our rights to own firearms. What they've started doing recently is making, for some way, somehow, making the ammo prices go up. a box of 9mm handgun rounds. There's 50 in there. Yes, I'm doing the dramatic pauses. I looked at it. It was about $75. 9mm. The same box I used to be able to buy for $35 is now $75. Kind of like the prices of gas. You got so many people that would justify saying that it's not the Democratic Party, it's not Joe Biden's fault that the prices of gas is going up, but I find it quite ironic that no sooner than our president right now took office, the prices of gas started going up. Coincidence? What I also find coincidence, and I'm not going to touch too much on this at all, but why is there always a mass shooting or an incident when it comes to gun control? When they're trying to push gun control, and when they're trying to hide something. Like, what is the Democratic Party trying to hide now? The fact that we have an unfit president who can't walk up the stairs right, who can't form complete sentences. Heck, he went on air trying to talk about and give props to the Democratic congressional representatives out of Houston. He couldn't even name them. 2 of them specifically he worked with for a long time, and 2 of them, this is their second term. So you've got, let's see if I can do a better job, Sheila Jackson Lee, Al Green, Sylvia Hernandez, and Lizzie Fletcher. He didn't even get her. But he left out Dan Crenshaw, Troy Nehls, also in the area. He left out, let's see, who did he left out? Oh, he left out Michael Cloud, who's just south of them. You know, I was wanting to run for Congress. District 22, District 27, maybe even District 2 in Houston. I wanted to, but those are all housed by Republicans. I may go up against one of these Democrats because, you know, in review of the Constitution and the FEC regulations, I don't have to live in that actual district to run for Congress. I just have to reside in the state. So I could potentially live in El Paso and run in Houston. I'm just saying, that's what the law says. Will I exploit it that much? No. I'll still live in the area so I can be a representative of the people with the people. I just won't go that extreme. Speaking of office, my last episode I talked about a position I was thinking about running for. The position was mayor of my hometown in Victoria. Now, I live kind of in 2 spots. I live in Alvin and I live in Victoria. Mostly Alvin. I have a house in Victoria. I have utilities in Victoria with my name. You know, all that good stuff. I could very well legit be based out of Victoria. But I spend more time here in Alvin. The law says you have to be a resident of the city or the district that you want to run in Victoria for over a year, or for a year at least, I should say. Now, while I could say that, I don't think I'm going to, because I'm not there enough as it is. Whenever I'm home for the weekends, I come to Alvin. That's my house. I have my house in Alvin. I come here. So I'm opting to not run for mayor in Victoria. I could. I've looked at some of the candidates. I could, and I could win. I feel like my calling is something else. Whether it's just me talking to this microphone all day long, great. But I feel like that's not the way for me to go. That was way left field, ADD moment there. So yeah, when I run for Congress, because it's still going to happen, it's going to be somewhere in the Houston area. It's going to be rough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be expensive. But I think that's where God is pulling me, is that route. Thought about it long and hard, prayed about it, about going to Victoria, and it just wasn't me. It just wasn't for me. That's not where God wanted for me. So I'm not going to do the mayor. I'll stick with my original plans, which would be to run for something local here where I am first, and then branch out from there. Maybe by then, the country will kind of have already come to its senses and decided that not so much Democrat, because I see some value in the Democratic Party, but the socialists need to go. And, I was having a conversation with somebody, Republican versus Democrat, conservative versus liberal, and I told them, just because I am conservative doesn't necessarily mean I am staunch Republican. Even though I said that before, that I'm staunch Republican, but just because I am conservative does not mean I am party Republican. It's just the parties nowadays aren't what they used to be. And we all know this. Anyone who has been alive in the 80s and the 90s can see the difference. 2000s come along and the split started happening. And it just got worse and worse and worse. 2004, the Clinton eras, or the Bush eras even actually happened that route. 2008, the Obama eras, when it started really becoming obvious. That little wedge that was driven started going deeper, then that's when the divide started happening. That's when the right and the left became further and further apart. Then you got people like me who are kind of centrist. If we don't pick a side, then we fall in the crack. Think about that. There may be one independent, maybe two libertarians in office out of the over 350 representatives right now. Yeah, that's right. That few. The parties are so deep in there that the control that they have is it's scary. So though I may not be staunch Republican, I will have to align myself with the Republican Party because that's where my ideals align most. And I found this article on Yahoo News. Democrats confront limits of own powers, from the Note. This is the take with Rick Klein. Mind you, I haven't previewed this at all. I just saw the headline and I want to kind of read this off the top. So here we go. A sampling of the congressional agenda these days reads something out of progressive dreams. A wealth tax, trillions in news infrastructure spending with climate change protection built in. That's a weird one. There's always stuff built into these bills. Okay, so back to the story. Expanding background checks for gun purchases, abolishing the filibuster, statehood for the District of Columbia. By the way, expanded background checks. I just purchased a firearm, my fourth one. I've never have had to wait more than an hour for my background check to come back. I picked it up yesterday, bought it 6 days ago. I don't have a background with any issues. Okay, so moving on. Abolishing the filibuster, statehood for the District of Columbia, and even possibility of overturning a House election in Iowa where a Republican was certified as winner by 6 votes. Now, this story I'm just kind of realizing now I might have been shooting myself in the foot because this covers just about everything I was going to cover. But either way, let's read it. Democrats, in full control of Washington for the first time in more than a decade, could conceivably do all of these things in the months to come, not to mention the 57 executive orders that Joe Biden has already done. The picture here actually has the illustration here is a picture of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, both at the desk. The desk says the American Rescue Plan, has a sign on it that says the American Rescue Plan. They're both sitting there ready to sign. That goes along with the saying. The scariest words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. There's a decent chance they'll accomplish none of them. While they can blame Republican obstruction, they'll also have to save some of the blame for themselves. So let's talk about that just a little bit. Iowa election. I was going to talk about that. The Republicans that cited to impeach Donald Trump are opposed to that. There's even Democrats that are opposed to that. So here's what Dean Phillips, a representative that is a Democrat out of Minnesota, said. He acknowledged the pain of losing the election by just 6 votes, because that was the margin there. This is another one of those cases where they magically found votes, boxes of votes, later. But wrote on Twitter that overturning it in the House would be even more painful for America. Just because a majority can does not mean a majority should. And I think I said that in my last week episode. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Is there a trend there? It's almost as if some stuff that I've talked about before has come to pass already. Who would have known? Also, something that I've just mentioned, I think it was 2 episodes ago, about Donald Trump starting his own social media. Yeah. Guess what he's doing? So here's what I want to know. And I was going to go into another segment about sponsorship here, but this is what I want to know. This is how I think you can help sponsor me. Not so much the money. If you want to go click on the link to become a supporter of the show, by all means, please do so. I would totally appreciate it. How many people are actually listening to me out there? I've got a small subscriber list, 538 at the time of this, the time that I'm filming this. But way back when the presidential elections, the primaries were still going. Before that, in fact, it was about a year before that. Right before that. I got the dates on my Facebook somewhere, but I had proposed a plan out there about credit reporting. Miss Vice President, then Senator, then presidential candidate, who totally sucked at it. I don't know how she got to be Vice President. She sucked at her presidential race. She proposed the same exact credit repair plan that I did. Not repair plan, I'm sorry, credit reporting. Same thing, almost verbatim. Then I remember calling her out for that, and I got a cease and desist from her. Do y'all remember that? Go check back some of my older videos. I just called Trump getting his own social media platform. I called it. There's a couple other things that I've called already that I'm not going to repeat because they might be bad. Like really bad. No profit at all. I'm not. I see trends. That's what I see. That's part of my job. Marketing, sales, and I see trends. I see a lot of trends. And I see a lot of things that I've kind of called out happening already. But back to the Dems here that are overreaching their limits. Washington, D.C. becoming a state. It was never intended to be a state. In fact, it was intended to be separate from the states. So it wouldn't be controlled or wouldn't be influenced by state power. And I'm not talking about the United States. I'm talking about, Texas, Virginia, Florida. It's claiming that it's within its right to be its state. Okay, if you want to be a state, file for statehood. I can get that. But for me, the city of Washington, D.C., it's always been a Democratic city. Well, at least for the majority of the time. It's just another power grab by the Democrats to get more seats in Senate, to get more representation. If it wants the benefits of a state, it is in the borders of Virginia. Become part of Virginia. Did I say that out loud? The crazy part is there are counties in California and in Oregon that don't feel represented by their states. These are rural counties, but they are counties nonetheless. People live there. The Democratic people love to say land doesn't vote, but you know what lives on land? People. You know where our produce comes from? Land that is farmed by people. That's right. They require and they deserve as much representation as you and me in Houston, in Austin, Orlando, New York, but they're being left out. Their argument is, well, California isn't acknowledging our existence, so let's become part of another state. Let's get another state to annex us. And I think they're looking at Idaho or something like that. It's one of the states that's closer to them, that borders them. They could very well say, well, let's become our own state. But no, they're being actually kind of responsible about it and saying, this state doesn't want us, so let's go to this state. So what happens if the people in that area all come to a vote and say, yes, we all want to be part of this other state over here? Now, Idaho has already said, we'll take you. But what about California? What does that mean for California? They lose a district. They lose taxpayer money. Oh, they don't want to represent them, but they're real quick to take their money in taxes. So will California let them go? Probably not. So would the federal government step in? Now, these areas, these counties that they're looking at are primarily Republican counties because, quite frankly, most of the Democratic people are in the urban areas. We all know this. Here's another thing that I saw. The definition of urban. And I'm going to go off on a tangent again. I saw this in a couple city council meetings. I not only attend my own city council meetings, but I attend the Victoria, Texas city council meetings by virtual meetings, and a couple other smaller towns. They have the Zoom meetings and the YouTube live stream meetings, and I attend them just so I can see how they go. The issues between city to city are phenomenal. But I forget what the exact name of the branch is. It's the people who do the census, basically. They're changing the term of an urban area. See, now my hometown of Victoria used to be considered an urban area. They have about 65,000 people population. Victoria is actually kind of split down the middle, but there's a lot of Republicans. It's primarily Republican. We've got Republican representation there, Victoria and Corpus Christi. So these people that run the Census Bureau decided, out of nowhere, an urban area is no longer 65,000 people. You have to have at least 100,000 people to be considered an urban area. Now for Victoria, that is 35,000 more people. They're not going to pop them out in a day. So Victoria is no longer considered an urban area. What that means for cities like Victoria around that size. And there's a lot of them, a lot of cities out there. They are now losing millions of dollars of years in grant money because they're not considered urban areas anymore. That statement was actually acknowledged, and I forget the exact wording that they put out there, but that statement was actually acknowledged by the Bureau. They said, we know you're going to lose this grant money, but we're sorry. You're not big enough to play with the big boys anymore. Stuff like that. Victoria used it for transportation, the Victoria Public Transit. What's going to happen there? Are they going to have to shut it down? Are they going to lose jobs? They did it for infrastructure. They did it for when we had the freeze. Part of the money that we get, or in that cities in general get, is from the government. They're going to lose that money now. Development, infrastructure, education. A lot of that money comes from the government, and they're saying, nope, you're not one of the big boys no more. You can't play. Sorry. So what I see is going to happen there is there are going to be a lot of people migrating to bigger cities that have those added extra benefits. There's people that I know that rely on the public transportation, which I think public transportation is a good thing. You don't necessarily have to own a vehicle to get around town. It's cheap. You get there. And safer for the economy, from what I understand, and the environment. Go figure. Man, they got so much more I want to talk about. I mean, border issues. We got kids in cages versus children in migrant centers. There's so much more I want to talk about. So much more. And to think, when I started talking this morning, I didn't know exactly what I was going to talk about yet. I just started talking. I think those work out the best for me. But I see still a lot of worrying going on. A lot of worrying. Because we are, dare I say, in the last days. The Bible tells us that. In fact, out of Timothy it says, 2 Timothy chapter 3, but realize this, that in the last days difficult times will come. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, slanderers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, malicious, gossips, without self-control, brutal, haters of good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding to a form of godliness, although they have denied its powers. Avoid such people. That was a long list, wasn't it? There are a lot of people going out there, a lot of people that are fitting this exact description here. And it's happening more and more every day. Every day we get closer. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. There's a lot happening. There's a lot that's going to be happening. And if you are one of the unfortunate that are here after the rapture, there's going to be horrible times to come. What we're living through right now is just a sneak preview, the G version of what is to come after the rapture. Now, I don't know who is going to be that person, the one person that everybody looks up to that's really not the person you're supposed to be looking up to. But I know the times that he's going to usher in, it's going to be horrible. People are going to die for that. But we have that victory through Jesus Christ. Hopefully, you won't have to be here for that. Hopefully, your loved ones won't have to be here for that. Hopefully, when he says to come home, we are all home with him. Because he came to this earth, fully God and fully man of a virgin birth, atone for the sins of each and every one of us out there, each and every sin I have committed and will commit. He took upon himself. He died for those sins, and he rose 3 days later, after which he ascended to heaven, where he is now preparing a place for us to go live with him eternally. So I'm looking forward to that. Even though all of this stuff that's happening that I talked about in the last so many minutes prior to this, all of that that's happening is irrelevant to what's going to happen. All you got to do is believe and accept it. Accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and live for him every day. My name is Andrew Alvarez, and I'm the Latino Conservative.